the future held. There'll be no certainty. The whole idea of an economic partnership or a trade agreement is that it lasts indefinitely, and businesses which have to make substantial investments to develop goods to sell to a market maybe a year, 2, 3, 4 years from now, know that the rules will remain more or less the same 3 or 4 years from now to what they are today, or they will be changed in a harmonious way. If Britain decides it's going to leave and it's going to have different rules, and that on principle having different rules is something that they insist upon, that means that businesses from the European Union wanting to develop the market in Britain, or indeed British firms wanting to develop the market in the European Union, won't know where they will stand and therefore will have difficulty investing. We want the maximum amount of certainty as well as the maximum amount of fairness. It is important to say, however, that this works both ways. If we have a code of practice that prevents unfair competition, that would prevent unfair competition by EU firms to the disadvantage of Britain, just as it would protect EU firms from British competition that was unfair. It's a two-way process to have common standards. It benefits everybody.
So, Mr. Prime Minister, as you lay that out, it sounds like it's going to be pretty difficult to come up with a deal. It's understandable why both sides are sort of signaling we may not get a deal here. Let's talk about the practicalities of that, and let's come back to your home country in Ireland. What happens? Is there going to be a border with Northern Ireland? Are they going to have customs clearances coming across that border?
No, we've reached an agreement. The EU has reached an agreement with Britain that the border, if there is a border, and if there's a trade agreement, it will be a much less important border than if there isn't a trade agreement, will be on the Irish Sea between Northern Ireland and the mainland of Britain, rather than on the unenforceable 300-mile long land border in Ireland. That's already agreed. So if there are tariffs to be collected or the conformity of goods with standards to be checked, it will be done at a port in London, in England or in Belfast, rather than on the border in Ireland, which would be impractical, as well as being politically very explosive, because it would aggravate the tensions that have existed and have cost so much lives in Northern Ireland over many years.
Exactly, something none of us can conceivably want. I dare say that probably Ireland is one of the economies most closely integrated with the United States at this point. What are the possible economic effects on Ireland, on investment in Ireland, on business in Ireland, on employment in Ireland, if in fact there is no deal and we go back to WTO terms for trade?
Well, there will be pluses and minuses, but more minuses than pluses. On the minus side, we will face substantial tariffs on our exports of food products to Britain. And indeed, 70% of the food that they eat in Britain comes from the European Union, and they will be paying higher prices because of higher tariffs for the food that they buy in British shops. But the same operates in reverse. Britain will face tariffs on its lamb exports, for example, to the continent of Europe, which it doesn't face at the moment. And indeed, Ireland may take some of that market because Britain can no longer supply it and get over the tariff wall. There also has been a significant movement, indeed, of financial services from London to Ireland, to Paris and to Frankfurt, because the EU market is much bigger than the UK market, and financial service operators want to be in the big market where they can serve a bigger range of customers. So being in the EU, being in Dublin or Frankfurt or Paris is more advantageous than being in London for many in the financial services field. So that's a plus, if you like, for Ireland. But we would far prefer if there was agreement. Indeed, we would far prefer if Britain had never decided to leave the European Union at all. Because as long as we had a common set of rules with Britain, we were able to meet them on all sorts of occasions where we were doing work together in the European Union, and that reduced tensions and promoted understanding between Ireland and Britain. And those opportunities are now going to fall away as a result of Britain's insistence that it must be sovereign at all costs.
Mr. Prime Minister, I can't let you go without asking you about the situation with COVID in Ireland. How is Ireland faring?
Ireland is doing relatively better than most European countries, but we still have a significant problem. In the last few days, there have been reductions in the incidence of COVID, but that seems to have flattened, so to speak, and we are worried about Christmas. that there will be a lot of mixing of people over the Christmas, and a lot of people may be coming back to Ireland from other countries which have a higher level of COVID perhaps than we have, and that could lead to a spike in COVID cases in January and pressure on our hospitals. And we're hoping that won't happen, because it will cost lives if it does.
Right. Well, that's one thing that we are on the same page as you are on. Thank you so much. Really a treat to have you with us. That's the Honorable John Bruton. He's former Prime Minister of Ireland. A programming note, Wall Street Week airs tonight at 6 p.m. Eastern Time. Larry Summers, Saira Malik, Catherine Baker, and Neil Ferguson are among the guests. This is Balance of Power on Bloomberg Television and Radio. This is Balance of Power on Bloomberg Television and Radio. I am David Weston. In just moments from right now, SpaceX is scheduled to launch its Falcon 9 rocket from Cape Canaveral. The rocket this time will be carrying a satellite for Sirius XM. For all those who get Sirius XM on your radio, this is the way you get it. Joining us now is Sean Casey, Silicon Valley Space Center co-founder and managing director. So, Sean, thank you so much for being with us. For the television part of our audience, we are now watching this rocket on the launch pad. Give us a sense of the significance of this particular launch.
Right. Well, this is a very exciting launch because this is actually the 7th launch of the B-1051 booster. This booster, the first stage, was previously used for the NASA Crew demo mission back in March of 2019. It launched the RadarSat in June of 2019, and then the last 4 launches, the last 4 uses of this booster have been for support of the Starlink mission. The Starlink is typically launching about 15,000 kilograms to low Earth orbit to build out the Starlink constellation. Another booster, B-1049, has also done about 7 launches, but this is the first booster relaunch that has that's had 6 previous launches, and that's actually launching a commercial payload. As you mentioned, this is the Sirius XM radio satellite, which was built by Space Systems Loral. It's replacing one of the Hughes Boeing satellites that's already in a geostationary orbit. So this represents a tremendous milestone for SpaceX in being able to build and refly these boosters. The Block 5 is a workhorse for SpaceX. The goal is to get to get reuse of these booster programs, to bring the launch cost down by a factor of 10x, and this is just yet another big milestone for SpaceX. This is the 25th flight for this year. 80% of the flights for 2020 have been with reused boosters. This beats the 2018 launch record of 18 flights per year. And today's flight, this is actually the second heaviest non-classified payload that SpaceX has launched. So as we're sitting here watching the countdown, what matters is just the first couple of minutes of the launch. It looks like things may be on hold right now.
Well, exactly. It was supposed to launch at 55 after the hour, and it's about 56 right now. So we'll continue to watch this. My colleague Valen Quinn will step in with Sean Casey. In the meantime, that does it for me on television. I'm going to go over to radio. This is Balance of Power on Bloomberg.
Thanks to David Weston for bringing us at the beginning of this countdown here. We have the clock stuck at 15 seconds. We were watching it go from T-minus 2 minutes, now at T-minus 15 seconds. However, it is not moving, so we should just assume that there's a bit of a delay or perhaps a problem. Sean, how often does this happen that we see the countdown clock